Corporal Clyde Eugene Hogue, United States Army, World War II. Folks, what an honor. I interviewed Clyde Hog February 28, 2003 in Mesa, Arizona. One of the very first D-Day stories I ever recorded for my Lest They Be Forgotten documentary series. He's featured in my first film, Omaha Beach, D-Day. And I'm reminiscing right now. I'm going back 21 years ago. Clyde was 79 when I interviewed him. And I'd just make a note, most of the Vietnam vets today are the same age as the World War II veterans were when I started my work 21 years ago. And they're almost all gone now. And in 20 years, who's going to tell the Vietnam stories? But folks, you Vietnam listeners, let me make a plug here. You need to watch these stories, these World War II stories. This is why we are what we are as a country, as a strong country, when we are strong. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? We're under attack right now, but we're going to survive. But it's men like Clyde Hog is the reason we have what we have today. He went to war and he served his country with honor and dignity, and just a great example, one of my World War II heroes. Clyde passed away in 2009 in Benton, Iowa. He was 86 years of age, and he was laid to rest with full military honors at Marshallton Cemetery in Benton, Iowa. So God bless the Hogue family. I got to know some of you, and hope you get to see this interview with your dad. Clyde served with the 743rd Tank Battalion on Omaha Beach, one of the first troops in on Omaha Beach on the morning of June 6, 1944. He was attached to the 30th Infantry Division, 116th Regiment. Folks, I'm telling you, the 16th Regiment, 116th Regiment took the most casualties on that landing that morning. Clyde was right there in the midst of them as a tank driver, and he tells a gruesome story. It's not gory, but it's really a gripping story, that's a better word, of how he had to run over dead American bodies with his tank. But he'll tell the story of how that happened and why he had to do that. It seems like, are you kidding me? One of the most stunning stories that I've ever heard in combat, and he tells it really gracefully. But Clyde was right there. First wave, Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944. What a remarkable man. He tells me a great story. Was wounded, received a Purple Heart for his actions, and came home to tell about it. Lived a great life, lived a really good life. My heart's full, I tell you folks. We're coming up on the 80th anniversary of D-Day. This is the first love of my work. You got to understand this. This is the first love of my work, the World War II veterans, D-Day. The first article ever written about my work was from a reporter in Mesa, Scottsdale, Arizona with the East Valley Tribune, filmmaker looking for D-Day vets. And that began the whole door of opportunity for me to start interviewing these men. And I wanted the real people that were there, not the Hollywood actors that Steven Spielberg used. And I'm grateful that I've had that opportunity. So, coming up on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, Voices of History Radio. Folks, this is my introduction here. I'm going to be airing D-Day stories June 5th, 6th, and 7th on KVOH, Voices of History Radio. If you want to learn a lot about D-Day, I've got the stories, folks. I've got many dozens and dozens and dozens of stories, 2 films on the D-Day landings. We're going to air those on Voices of History Radio. You can download the app free, or you can go to larrycapetto.com, and the home page has the player on there. You hit play and you start listening. I invite you to tune in. I invite your children, grandchildren, the history that's contained here. You need to learn about Normandy. If we wouldn't have landed on Normandy, if we wouldn't have had the Normandy invasion, it would be totally different today. Hitler would have prevailed, and it's just not a good thought. But we prevailed. We got the inroads there. We took control of that beach, marched inland, eventually to Germany, and won the war. So I'm going to be also sharing more of my Voices of History D-Day stories on this channel too. So we're going to share Clyde Hogue's story today. So I'm happy to do that. I'm going to thank Sean Johnson. Sean's been a supporter of my work, and he's a monthly contributor to my work. Sean, I love you, brother. Thank you so much for making it possible for me to share stories like Clyde's today with this viewing audience as we learn more about the history of what happened and why we have our freedoms. Sean, thank you for supporting our veterans and our country, and I just salute you, sir, and I'm so glad to be working with you. I'm going to meet you in person like all of my supporters someday and shake your hands. It's going to be great. I'm going to end with this, folks. I've had the opportunity to tell my story. I've been wanting to tell my story of how I told all of their stories for the last 21 years. The opportunity has arisen in Nashville, Tennessee at a studio there. They've given me the opportunity to come in, shoot a professional interview, sit down and be able to talk like my veterans have talked. It's called Capturing Courage on Camera. I want to encourage you and hopefully interest you in helping to donate to that work. There's a link in the video description and in the comment section, or you can just go to larrycapello.com and send me a message that you want to donate to that. I would really ask, I know some of you have been wanting to help me, this would really help me, so I need to get the funding together for that, and a very modest budget, but I want to go there and do that interview, and then I'll share it with all of you, and it'll be my legacy of how I've told their stories, capturing courage on camera. God bless you. Thank you for hanging in there with me on this introduction. I'm so proud of Clyde Hog and the service he did to our country, provided for our country. He's gone now like most of my World War II veterans are. Most of my Korean veterans are gone. My work's become very bittersweet, but as one of my viewers said, it's an honorable burden to carry. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you for sharing these stories and subscribing to this channel. And I salute Clyde Hog and thank you for your service to our country. Just tell me, I know who you are, you're Clyde Hog, but just tell me your name, your rank, and the outfit you're with in Omaha. Go ahead.
Okay. I am Clyde Hog. I live in Mesa, Arizona. I was in the Army. I was in the 743rd Tank Battalion, Company C.
Okay, that's enough for an introduction. Okay, what I want to focus on, Clyde, for the interview is the assault landing. Let's talk a little bit about that, okay? And I want to know what kind of boat you're on, and let's kind of, if you can remember in your mind, go back to, you probably sailed over from England on a big ship, and then 5 or 10 miles out, you probably got onto no? You came on the LCT all the way? Okay. How many men were on that? 160 men were on that?
No, three tanks.
Okay, 3 tanks. Were there any infantry on that?
No, okay. Just us.
And you drivers?
Huh?
You're a tank driver?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about approximately what time, you went in the first wave, you said?
First wave, first 160 men on the beach.
Okay. Why don't you just tell me, just give me a second here. I want you to tell me about that morning and what you remember.
I would like to start the 4th of
Go ahead.
The invasion was supposed to be in the 5th. And we started out the 4th. We got about halfway over there and had to come back. It was too rough. So we left the 5th and we went on in that day.
Okay.
So we made 2 trips really.
Tell me about your approach to shore that morning, about what time it was, what you heard, what you saw, what was going on?
Going in, we could see the big old hill mountain. Oh, it ain't a mountain, it was just a big hill behind the beach for quite a ways. And after we got in so far, the Navy went to firing. And I mean, they blew that hill all to thunder, almost. And it didn't look like it could be a person alive there. But the division, the 1st Division, they landed to our left. They dumped their tanks off in the water way out where they were supposed to. They lost all the tanks but 2. They all went down. 2 got in out of all. So the 1st Division, they fought without any tanks for a while. Now we landed to the right of them. We clear to the right side end of Omaha Beach. That was our area. We was attached to the 30th Division, the 116th Regiment. So they decided to bring us on any closer because they couldn't. They seen we was going to lose them. But just as we got ready to go in, why they told us to mount up. I had just got in, and my assistant driver, and my hatch had no more than shut, and a shell hit the tank. It blew a hole through the front of my canvas, just out that big. I could see it. It wounded my tank commander. I didn't know it. He was just getting in, and he got hit in the leg. He stood in that tank till 2 o'clock in the afternoon with that leg tied to the shroud of the 75, and then they relieved him finally. Then when we got in close enough, they dropped the ramp. We dropped down, went in the water, and I landed pretty close to where I was supposed to land. Most of them didn't. I don't know how it worked out, because I just did what the tank commander told me to do. We got in, and all the time I was coming in, I could see water coming in through that hole in the canvas, or shroud, and I knew I couldn't swim far because I was going to sink. Finally, the best feeling in the world was when them old tracks touched down. They pulled on up the little ways, and of course, just before this, really, my gunner was deathly seasick. He was green. He was throwing up. He was throwing up when he couldn't throw up. And my worry was, I am no good if I don't have a gunner. What am I going to do, you know? But when we got on shore, touched down, that man started coming out of it just that quick. Of course, I dropped the shroud down. Until I dropped the shroud down, he couldn't fire. He couldn't even see. I'm the only guy who could see. I dropped the shroud down, and then, of course, he started firing, and I hadn't got up just to the water line, I would say, and a soldier. I thought it was a soldier with a flamethrower, but it had to be engineer. He got about 50 feet in front of my tank, and he's just right beside a hedgehog, and he fell like a bullet. Had never moved a muscle. So we started going up the beach a little ways, and these hedgehogs are sitting everywhere, but not in line. So the tank commander told me, to start out, and they was too close. He couldn't guide me. So he told me to start going, and he says, for God's sakes, don't hit one of them. Every one of them had a big old mind on it like that. I worked my way on up through to the beach, and of course the gunner, I stopped every once in a while, and the gunner was firing on the hill all the time. And of course there was shells and stuff landing around us. And by the time I got to the beach, the infantry had started coming in then. And at least half of them were still laying in the water. They didn't make it. And from then on, it was just move and stop and fire. We couldn't sit in any one spot too long because the Germans would start zeroing in on you. So after a little while, the tank commander again told me I had to move out, and I called back and said, I can't. He said, why? I said, I'll run over soldiers. I said, they were just laying everywhere. And he said, well, we have to move. And I had to give that an awful thought. That's the worst thing in the world your man has to do. But I started out, and I decided if I got to run over anybody, I'm going to go for the legs. And that's what I did. And I made sure that I would be off of him before I'd turn, because them old tracks would just tear him up. But I run over quite a few soldiers. There was no way to get away from it. And we would go up the beach a ways, and then maybe we'd come back a ways, and that firing all the time. And another thing, I don't know how they were so accurate, is if my gunner fired a burst, a big long burst at some spot on the hill, just in a little bit, here come a big old Navy shell and landed right where he was firing. How they could be so accurate, I don't know. I'm proud of them boys. So they learned that you had to shoot little short bursts. So if you didn't want the Navy there, if you wanted the Navy, would hang right in there. And that happened. It was just touch and go all the time. But I would say about 2 o'clock, it had quieted down. The infantry had got up on the hill and cleared it, and there wasn't too many shells a falling then. Probably their spotters might have got caught. But they decided that, at 2 o'clock about my tank commander was relieved. My platoon lieutenant, his tank had been disabled. So he took over my tank. He took Sergeant Boley's place. And in the meantime, I had seen soldiers carrying boxes about like that, and carrying them, and they looked like they were kind of heavy, and he's carrying them and piling them up on the cement obstacle they had across the road so nobody could get off the beach. And I finally asked somebody what they was doing, and they carried 1,000 pounds of TNT up there and stacked it again that obstacle, cement obstacle, 4 foot high and probably putting her that wide. And finally they got ready to blow it. Well, I was sitting less than a quarter of a mile away from them, and they had me back up out of the way. And when that 1,000 pounds went off, it shook the tank. And that old tank weighed 37,000 pounds. It was 37 ton, not pounds. And then we started out ready to go off the tank. I was driving a lieutenant, so I was the first man off at exit D1. And that hole was just big enough for my tank to go through. We got up. There was a truck or two or something. I knew at least one had went ahead. And I got up off the beach maybe 100 yards, and there that truck was down in a bomb hole crater. He had tried to go down and over it, and he was pulling one of the ton trailers, or half ton, whatever they call it. The Jeep had a quarter ton. I think they called them a half ton. They had regular truck tires. They could haul quite a load. And he'd got down in there and he was stuck. So they had me pull up there to pull him out. And they took my big old cable down and hooked onto that. They put it over the axle of this trailer and hooked it on the truck. And when they did it, I said, "Don't do that." I said, "I'll bend that axle." "Oh, no, you won't bend that axle." So I said, "Okay." So I started backing up. I seen that old trailer just start bending and going down, and I just kept on backing. If they didn't think it would bend, it's all right with me. So I pulled him out, and then we went around him and went on up about a quarter of a mile to the T road. This is the Verville Draw is the one we went off of. And we turned right just a little bit, and there was a farm there, and maybe more, but this farm we pulled into the pasture and circled it. And I had no idea how many tanks we'd lost, or anything. We never lost a man D-Day. The 743rd Tank Battalion never lost a man D-Day. They had them wounded, but none was killed.
You've said a lot. I'm going to go back now and take little pieces of what you said now. Before you landed on the beach with your LCT, okay, did you know how bad things were? Were there infantry in front of you, or were you landing first and then the infantry came behind?
Infantry, we landed first so that the infantry would have support.
Okay, now
they come in. They was in really. They was the last part of the first wave.
Okay, you realize what was about to happen on that beach? Or
I had no idea. I had no fear. The only fear I had was when my gunner was sick. I thought I had the world's best tank. I had no fear of dying.
were you taking any artillery or small arms fire before you hit the beach out on the sheet?
As far as coming in, swimming in, to my knowledge, we was never shot at.
Okay.
I could have been, but I seen no small arms fire.
So really, they hadn't really opened up yet until the
Well,
infantry.
they was still. We was out far enough that the small arms really couldn't do anything, and they was using their artillery and stuff on the ships out back behind. See, there was 5,000 ships or boats in that convoy. So at that time was the biggest in the world.
So you land, you get onto the shore, and they drop the ramp, and then you drive your tank out.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized a lot of tanks were lost, but you got out. Your treads hit the beach, and then now you're inside the tank, right?
Oh yes,
So
everybody.
how are you seeing outside? What's going on?
I had my periscope they'd fitted a long periscope up just high enough that I could see over the canvas.
Could you see behind you?
No, I had to look just where it was. Mm-hmm.
So when you're describing the soldiers coming in, being shot on the beach, you were seeing that through your periscope?
Well, once I got on the beach and all, everything I seen is through a periscope. I seen the whole war through the periscope. But as soon as I got down on the beach, I knocked that tall one off, and I used my regular one then.
And you could tell that the infantry were being wiped out, those first few waves.
Oh yes, See, I was with the 116th. They lost about 3/4 of their regiment on the beach. I fought with them for about 5 days, and then they got replaced with the 30th Division. And my outfit fought with them clear through the war then, till it was over.
So you could just see, what could you hear inside the tank? I mean, most of my stories are outside. Could you hear the shelling? Could you hear men screaming? What
No.
were you hearing?
The tank is too noisy. You don't hear anything. Your eyes is the only thing you had to go by.
Were you in radio communication with anybody?
Yes, the tank commander could talk to all the guys.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what was he saying about the landing? Was he saying good, bad? What was he saying? Chaos?
When he was talking to the battalion, I couldn't hear, but when he was talking to the tank, then I could hear him say it, talking. And he would spot something, and he'd have the gunner turn around and shoot at it, either the 30 or the 75. My gunner shot so long on D-Day, he burnt the barrel up on the 30 caliber. That evening we had to put on a new one.
He was shooting at the German machine guns? What was he shooting?
He was shooting at the hill where the up on top is where they were. And they'd see a burst coming from somewhere while he would fire at it.
And was he successful? Was he doing his job? I mean, was he hitting those targets?
There's no way of telling. Mm-hmm. There was no, because I really didn't know what he was aiming to do. 'Cause my only interest was to get in that tank where they wanted it.
Were there troops behind your tank for cover?
So, yeah, a lot of times they were, and they would get down behind these hedgehogs too. There was no place that was safe, and they were safe behind the tank as long as the tank didn't get hit. If it did, well then they got hurt too.
So you pretty much were focused on your mission when you hit the beach. You knew what you had to do.
We knew what we had to do. We had to get off the beach, and then we were stuck there. I didn't get off the beach till almost dark, which is somewhere close to 10 o'clock at night. So we was on there, over 12 hours.
What else do you remember as far as the landing? And I'm gonna talk about something. If it bothers you, you don't have to talk about it. But you mentioned it about you saw soldiers lying on the beach, and your commander told you you had to maneuver around that beach, and you said,
Mm-hmm.
well, you don't want to run them over. I mean, you're obviously a soldier. You're going to follow those orders, but that's an amazing story. I mean, I've never heard that before. I mean, I've never heard that.
That
And
was
it's
when,
really chilling to hear that. I think the way you had to do it was very respectful. That you had to do it, but you did it in a certain way. But
I did it in the best way that I knew I could do it. I didn't want to hurt no boy that I could.
Did you find yourself at times like that praying or thinking about anything, or were you just so focused on your mission? Did you say, God, I'm sorry, I got to do that? What were your thoughts? Were they just all there, or were you wishing I wasn't here, I was back home? What were you thinking about?
Well, my biggest thought was I wanted to see all them Germans gone. That's mostly what I thought about, and getting the tank where they wanted it. I myself considered myself was a hell of a good driver. I knew that tank from A to Z. I did a lot of my own adjustments on the tank instead of having the maintenance do it. I didn't like my RPM. There was times when if you'd had just a little bit more, you could change gears and keep going, but you couldn't do it at 2400. Now, I'd watched them work on that motor time or two, and I seen how they did the governor. So I raised my RPM 200 RPM, and that made a world of difference in that tank.
What is that, a GM motor in that tank?
No, that was an airplane motor, nine cylinder, right Continental.
Now, is it the Tiger tank? Is that the German tank, Tiger?
Tiger and
isn't that the one where it could go real fast and go backwards and just, isn't that the Tiger tank, or is that?
We had a faster tank than they did, but they had more armor, more artillery. They had a lot bigger gun. They could shoot in one side of our tank, and if it was just right, they went on out the other side. We would just dent theirs and bounce off. That's when I found out that I didn't have the best tank in the world. And they knew it when they landed, when they sent us over there. But they was all set up for the Sherman M4A1, and so they just kept making them. They made, I forget, I seen it on TV the other day how many thousands that we made more than the Germans did. And what we did, that's what won the war. I've heard them say the tanks won the war, but if we got one knocked out, we had another take its place, where the Germans didn't.
Were you assigned to go in that first wave, or did you volunteer? How did you get
you just did what your battalion did. You had no choice in what you was going to do.
Because a lot of people don't realize that the tanks went in before the infantry.
There ain't one and none. You never see it on TV.
No, and I'll be honest. Up until a few weeks ago, I swore that the infantry went in first, but that was because I'd seen Saving Private Ryan, and the infantry went in first. And all the film footage I see.
The water, I would say 25 feet out, was a pinkish color. That's blood. And I've seen it on Saving Private Ryan, and that's the best film you can see on the beach. It's got the longest day beat.
So, did you see that through your periscope?
Yes,
did you see that?
Everything I seen was periscope.
Well, just tell me a little bit more about it. I mean, you obviously knew what it was. You saw soldiers lying around, and you probably thought, my God,
I started to tell you about 2 o'clock in that area. It's after the lieutenant took over my tank. It had quieted down, and so they decided he would take my tank down and pull out some of these hedgehogs. You know what a hedgehog is? So we went down, and I'd pull up to a hedgehog. They'd take the old cable and wrap around it. Then they'd get it back away, and then I'd back out and pull it out. Then I'd pull up to another, and they'd do the same thing. We did that probably 4 or 5 times. And to me, it was taking forever. I mean, they had to be a quicker way. And every time I pulled up to one of them hedgehogs, I was as close as 4 foot away from it, I would look at that big old mine, and there's about that big around, something like that. But they was a little rusty, and I told the lieutenant, I said, if you guys will get back and away from me. I said, I think I can run over them hedgehogs, and I'll be run over sideways, so I won't be hitting the detonator. And I said, I think I can do that. Well, he okayed it. So pretty soon, well, I pulled over one, and it worked fine. And I pulled over another and two, and it worked fine, and didn't go off. And yeah, I never realized if it went off, I was a goner. I was in a nice big tank. I was safe. But I pulled out. I run over probably another 5 or 6, and that kind of cleared the way so that the ships had a place to come into land without getting into something. And by that time, the lieutenant stopped me. He got scared, because how would he explain that? How that happened? You know, I know that's what his thoughts were. So that's when we went up a little later, why they blew the hole in the obstacle across the road, and we went on up to the tee and went in this field and circled it, and I was parked. I got to tell you a funny story. Is that legal?
Sure.
I was sitting in a corner, but I was out probably 50 feet, maybe 75. You know, not clear up against the hedgerow. That night, I spent the whole night cutting this tarp off of that tank, because I was afraid of fire. I should have left it. I think I should have left it. But I thought that canvas would burn like mad, you know. So I spent all night with a pocket knife cutting that off. And the bottom of that canvas was about 1/4 of an inch thick. And it cut hard. That's where I had to cut. And then when the other guys got up the next morning, why, we all got up there and tipped it off. Well, after that happened, why, my assistant gunner had to go to the bathroom. So he went over into the corner and backed up into it, and all at once the sniper went to firing at him. Now, did you ever see a man run with his pants down? He finally got him pulled up by the time he got back to the tank. And I stood at the back of the tank and watched all this, and there wasn't a thing I could have done to help him. I just laughing as hard as I could laugh, you know. Then we loaded up, and then they started shooting small arms fire at us, and it just sounded like they just tapping the tank with a hammer, you know. And I just sat there and smiled. They can't wasting their time there. The only thing they could done was knocked out a periscope, and we'd just stuck another one in. We had plenty of them.
Now, that periscope, it's kind of intriguing to me now. You said you could see what was going on outside the tank.
Yes.
That periscope. So
mine on the hatch, I could turn it.
So we can go around. You can see it different directions.
I could turn it this far or this far. I couldn't see back.
And you were actually able to see the American soldiers.
Oh, I could see just
shot or laying down, or
I could see just as good as I was if I had my head out. Mm-hmm. I have a.
What crossed your mind when you saw that? I mean, would you go, "Oh my God," or you expected to see that, or what?
Well, no, you really didn't expect to see people killed. But you took that with a grain of salt, because you knew. Then you realized that you was in a war, and the only thing you want to do was kill Germans. Now, to me, the American soldiers, they had to get as hard as the Germans was. They wanted to kill us. We wanted to kill them. And I seen two of them my gunner missed, and I was never so disappointed in my life. I just couldn't wait to see them boys fall. Where will I go from there? We pulled out the next morning from this pasture and took off to our, looking from the beach to the right. And of course, I had no idea where I was going. Every time I turned a corner, I was going south. I had no idea where I was. So we finally went for about a half hour or something like that. And finally we come into soldiers that was laying behind trees and hiding behind stuff, but they were just laying there. And I thought, well, heck, they ain't very good soldiers. Here we just went right on through them, you know. Come to find out, It was the Rangers that landed on Point de Hoc. We had went down to relieve them, and they was waiting on us. So I gained respect again when I found that out. And then from then on, it was just fighting every day. Mm-hmm. I was there 33 days, and I was on the line for about 31. Mm-hmm. We pulled back a time or two for maintenance, and that's the only reason we was off. I got hit with a bazooka one time. We'd come up this hedgerow, and there's a house right on the edge of the hedgerow with a walk-through gate. Mm-hmm. We got up to that. You fight the speed of the infantry. You don't get ahead of them. You don't get behind them. You stay with them. You're helping protect them. If they find a big gun, they get it out. We take care of all the infantry. We come up there and could go no farther, and the tank commander called down and said, "What will we do?" I said, "Pull all your hatches, shut all your hatches, and pull your scopes down." I said, "I'm going to go through the corner of that house." And so they did, and it was a nice brick house, nice red brick, you know. It was really a nice looking house. And so I went through the corner of it. I took out about 4 feet of that corner, and you never breathed such much cement, dust in your life. Oh, you couldn't breathe for just a little bit. All that air sucks right into the tank to cool the motor. And we got on through there, and then the infantry was already there, line clear crossed, and we started just a slight raise in the pasture. We started going up that with the infantry. And just about the time I got up where the top would be to that, I got hit with a bazooka. And of course, the minute it hit, I was in reverse. I hope there was nobody right behind me. And I was backing up. And about that time, they gave up the fight or something, I know. We turned around and went back through my hole I made. And then when we parked that night, I got out and looked, and that bazooka had hit right in front of me, about chest high. But it lacked about that much of coming through. So I was telling the guys, I said, "You don't have to worry about bazookas." I said, "Heck, look at that. They won't come in." The next day, I was south of St. Jean today, north of La Perrine. And we started out that morning, and we was going down. It'd be just a road they had to get to their pastures. There's a hedgerow on each side and weeds in the road, and I didn't like it because there was no place I could go if they started firing at me. I couldn't get out of there. And we went on down, and we hit the road and turned right and went just a little ways, and then we pulled into a field, and there's another hedgerow. Well, one tank had finally found a place where he could get up over it. And then the next tank could come up over it. I watched him. I was the next one then. I watched him, and he was spinning but still going. But he got over it. And I called the tank commander, and I said, "I can't make it." I said, "I'll spin out up there." Well, he says, "You've got to try it." So I did. I got up on top of it, and I spinned out. And I wasn't there a minute, I don't suppose, until a bazooka hit between me and the assistant driver at about this high or so. And you know how a bazooka works? A bazooka is kind of like a rocket. Charge fires it. When it hits, it explodes and drives a projector through. And that when it's going so fast and all, that metal is red hot. And I got hit in the stomach. It just felt like a 12-pound sledge hit me right in the belly. Oh, it hurt. I never let up. And I looked over at my assistant driver, and he was bleeding on this arm. I don't know where else he was, but he was bleeding there, I know. And he was really excited. And about that time, the tank commander called down to leave the tank. I left the tank, it was running. I told my assistant driver, I said, now when you get out just as fast as you can, and you fall out. You don't get up and stand and go. I said, get on the ground as quick as you can. And that's what I did. I got around behind the tank and laid there a little bit. Hurt, oh my God, you don't know how to. But then they picked me up and took me across the little road over beside another hedgerow. And I laid there for a while. Medic come along and he seen what I had, and he gave me a shot of morphine and some sulfa on my wound, and it was just a little bitty wound. It didn't look bad, but oh, it did hurt. And I laid there a while, and finally they brought a tank over and put me on the back of the tank and took me across, catty-cornered across the field and laid me in a gate. Well, I laid there a little bit, and pretty soon the Germans started dropping mortar in that field right there. And there I was laying right there in the open. I didn't like that. Well, I looked around and I seen that gate was on a hinge. So I wiggled myself up and got hold of the gate and pulled it around between me and the mortars. And at least I had a board between me and them. The driver that I first started in the tanks down in Yuma, it must have been his tank that brought me over. He come up and looked and squatted down beside me, and he looked at my tag. I was tagged. He looked at it, and big tears come in his eyes. He got up and walked away. Didn't say a word to me. And of course, Clyde thought, Clyde, you're in the world of hurt. I didn't know what that tag said, you know. Then pretty soon, while they come with a jeep, put me on a jeep, took me to the aid station, unloaded me, picked me right back up, put me in an ambulance by myself, and took me to the field hospital. Laid me in a big old tent there, it was just covered with soldiers laying on stretchers. And I looked around there and I thought, well, if I have to wait my turn, I'm dead. Because I knew I had to be bleeding inside. Another thing, when they took me across the road and laid me down, and then the medic came, about that time, before that I had to go to the bathroom. And you didn't have time. And so then I didn't feel like I had to go. I thought, boy, they broke my bladder. You know. So I rolled over on my side, and my bladder was all right. It worked. Then but I laying there in the waiting area. Why I wasn't there 10 minutes till a medic come along and he started cutting my clothes off. I had almost new jeans on. I said, well, I can take them off. You don't have to cut them off. He said, don't worry.
Patty was asking about when you were landing on the beach, before you landed, when you landed. Were your thoughts at all back home with your wife or your family?
No, sir, they weren't. I was strictly thinking about what we were going to have to do, and not knowing really what we was going to have to do. We had no idea what it was going to be like, because that was our first shot at it. Well, anyway, he cut my clothes off, and then they picked me up, and I was awful glad, because I thought I was going to have to wait my turn. They cut my clothes off, and he took me into the operating room. The operating room was just a little tent beside this big tent, dirt floor, but they had wood walkways. And they set me down as if there was a ward of burnt. So I knew at first I'd never seen it. I couldn't see nothing moving in front of me. So of course, I wasn't looking this way much. But from the area that I could see, there was nothing. Only Germans, I could see them firing up there.
So again, my question is, did you realize, I guess two questions, you were one of the first ones on the beach. Secondly, were you briefed as to what was going to happen when you hit the beach?
It was all brand new. We had no really idea what it was going to be like when we hit the beach. Yes, I knew I was going to be the first ones on the beach. I mean, we'd went through all that. We knew why we was there. We was there to protect the infantry. I'd never seen many tanks, because I wasn't looking that way. I was watching that hill all the time, or that I could. when I wasn't moving, while I was looking up there to see what was happening. That's how I seen what the Navy was doing for us.
Hold on a second.
Well, I knew when the first one come in because he got killed. The first man I seen got killed. But then until we got on up to the beachways, till I got up the beachways, why I never seen many infantry. But by the time I got up pretty well to the shoreline, why yes, I seen infantry here and there, and they was all down hiding behind something. They had no place to go. They finally got off the beach, thank God. That's what got me off.
Wouldn't that be kind of an eerie feeling that you can't hear anything? You're just kind of seeing all this stuff go on, and you're kind of wondering, because all the other stories I've had, it was so loud, they had the concussions of the shelling, it was overwhelming.
Well, they were outside.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. And inside with the tank and the tracks and the motor, you don't hear anything. I wouldn't be able to hear anybody if I didn't have my earphones on, you know.
Patty wants to know, when you hit the beach, when your tracks hit that beach, did you realize you were making history? I mean,
Oh no, we was just doing our job. I never gave that a thought. In fact, probably for years afterwards, I never realized that, you know, it was as big a deal as it was. Yeah. We only had one thought, and that was to get the Germans out and go home.
Okay, another follow-up question to that I have is, you obviously had a purpose for being there. I mean, did you see yourself being there, and maybe even looking back, the fact that you were actually protecting our country, our flag? I mean, you know, the patriotic things. I mean, were you, you know, you went to fight for our country, so we'd be safe over here.
Well, we was, I think about everybody, we was doing a job that had to be done. I don't think it was a guy in my outfit that was looking for glory. We had a job to do, and it had to be done. I never felt that I still don't feel that I did any great thing. I was in the war, I had to be, I didn't volunteer, I was drafted. And I did everything that I was supposed to do. And France is awful lucky that we won that war. And we are too, because we could be speaking German.
Patty says that, do you realize that to a lot of people you're a role model, you're a hero, and that times put a lot of distance between World War II and today, and a lot of that history is going to be lost?
It's gone.
Do you see yourself as a hero?
Never did. I don't. The heroes are laying over there in France. I'm just one of the lucky ones that got home. All I did was I did what I was told to do. I took care of my tank the best way I could, and that was my job. I put it where they wanted it put.
You know, do you see our freedoms? See, I personally, the freedoms that I enjoy today, I look back to your generation and what you did, and I'm appreciative of that. I'm very thankful for that.
Yes, sir, and that is true. And I've had younger guys at a store. I wear a cap. Get it, Patty. Up in the closet. I wear a cap at DAV, Disabled American Veteran, and I have several pins on it. The pin started when it was everything that pertained to me in the war.
What your feelings were from the first man that you saw till later in the day where the whole war was unfolding in front of you, and I've heard feelings of thinking that we were going to need to retreat at one point, or also, did you have those feelings? Did you also feel like we're going to do well here, or we're not going to do well here? What were the feelings you had as you had them?
The first man I saw killed was I never seen another infantryman for quite a while. I'd got clear up to the beach, I expect, before I seen one. As far as thinking about I had no thought that we wouldn't win. I never gave that a thought. I never realized that we was that close to being pushed off the beach. I never gave it one thought. We was going to win the war. That's all I know. All we had to do was get rid of them. I never gave it a thought once. And if they hadn't have made a few mistakes, the Germans, they could have done that. We can thank Hitler for that, because he wouldn't release the Tigers up on farther up the coast. And if he had, they'd have come down, and they could have probably stopped us. Usually it took 2 tanks to knock out a German tank. We couldn't hit him and do any good. We had to, one guy keep him busy, and another guy step around behind. You could hit him in the back end and kill him, but you couldn't hit him. Our shells just bounced off of him from the front or side. So we'd have to play hide and go seek a little.
Can you tell me, you said the first infantry person you saw, the first infantryman, what happened between that and all the bodies of people that were on the beach? What happened as people started coming in? What were your feelings then?
It was good to see people moving. I seen at least 1,200 dead people on the beach. At least that many. I'm conservative, I think. I don't know anything else. I know them infantrymen, they had to be a lot more scared than I was, because I was still brainwashed. I never really had a fear of getting hit. I knew it could happen, but I did not have the fear. Only my fear, like I said, was when my gunner was sick. From then on, we was just doing the job.
Did you see people in front of you as they were gaining ground, gaining momentum?
Our infantry?
Our infantry?
Oh yes, because we was always moving ahead. We never backed up. You'd come to a hedgerow, and each hedgerow was a battlefield. You fought hedgerow to hedgerow, and when you got one cleared, you had to go over to the next one. Start clearing it before you ever got to it. Naturally, if you seen movement, you heard the old 75 go off. And otherwise, mostly it was all 30 caliber stuff.
I have a question. Maybe I should keep my mouth shut.
You never thought of that. Your only thought was that what was laying ahead of you, Patty. I never had no thoughts that way. I don't think I never heard anybody else talk that way. We had a job to do, and we was trying to do it.
Well, I think it's important to note that at that point in your young life, you did not know what an important history making you did.
Oh, we didn't have the slightest idea.
That you changed the course. You had a part in changing the course.
We had a part of changing the world. She'd have been a terrible world if it had been the other way around.
Can I ask you, what would you say to the people in service now, those going over to Iraq or stationed?
Any soldier that goes over there, I say, you be trained as good as you can be. Calisthenics is a wonderful thing to keep you in shape. I liked them. A lot of the guys hated them. I like calisthenics because I was in pretty good shape anyway, and I wanted to stay that way. But a lot of the guys just wouldn't do it. When we go into Iraq, they got to have only one thought, and that is to wipe them out, get Saddam. I truly hope that they don't have to fight a political war like they did in Vietnam. If they do, they may lose. The only way a general can win a war is do what he has to do. And if they tie his hands up, we're in trouble.
Yeah. One more question.
Yeah, I got one left.
Okay. This is kind of a little bit off the subject, but I've been asking all the veterans this question, okay? And that is, looking back on what you did and looking at the world today and the freedoms that we have, what advice would you give to the young kids today about living their lives? What would you say to them?
Well, to me, I don't feel that the kids, they're not as well disciplined. They're more open-minded, they're more free to do what they think. Well, I did what my mother said, and my mother would spank my butt when she needed to. Now then, it's against the law to do that. Kids are altogether different, and we're in trouble. We're in trouble, I think, because it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get worse. It ain't going to get better. I don't know what to say, but they need to be more disciplined in school, everywhere. Yeah. Parents, they protect their kids. They know they're wrong, but they go ahead and protect their kids anyway. And I've told my son when he was growing up that if you get in trouble, you stand and take it. But if you are right, I'll back you all the way. And he did that once too.
Okay. That's good. That's enough.
Okay. This is Victory World War II. This is a good conduct medal. That means I was a real nice kid. This is American campaign. This is a presidential citation. My whole unit got that. This is a arrowhead. That's for landing on the beach.
Okay.
This is the Purple Heart for being wounded. This medal is a French medal that they gave us. I got it November 11th, Veterans Day. They had a big thing over to Phoenix. We went over there. Of course, this is my rank. This is my dog tag. That's my tank emblem that you wore on your jacket. And this is my outfit. And this is me.
Yeah.
I pretty much said the wrong thing.
Oh boy, okay. Wait, just 1 second here. Okay,